talk about the company as a whole for a few. You released some popular fighters of late, notably Junior Dos Santos, Alistair Overeem, Joe Romero. I'm curious, these are some very popular fighters, yet you're releasing them. I know you've hinted that you're going to be trimming the roster down in recent months, but why is the right time now to get rid of these fighters?
Well, we're always trimming the roster down. Every weekend, new guys come in and other guys go out. And I think that these speak for themselves. I mean, when you look at, people were wondering if there were problems, whatever. Alistair Overeem has never turned down a fight. Junior Dos Santos is one of the nicest guys ever in the history of the sport, former world champion of ours. We have nothing respect for both guys, but I think, these speak for themselves. I mean, if you look at age, wins and losses, it's time.
Yeah, they're definitely on the wrong side of 35. That's I know you're as you move on from these older fighters, you've alluded to revitalizing the UFC pipeline and finding new talent by kind of funding local MMA promotions who've been sidelined by COVID. How do you plan on investing into the MMA hotbed of Southern California, for example?
It's a great question. So, UFC Fight Pass, we've been signing some of these other leagues that are running right now so that, people can watch these fights. Now, normally before the pandemic, there's fights going on all over the world every weekend. Very limited now. So it's gonna be interesting to see how that impacts the sport in the next 5 years.
So you're essentially looking to kind of have your own minor system by partnering with the other companies, have it as a feeder?
What we've done is cut television deals with some of these guys and give them an avenue for fans to see these up-and-coming fighters and these guys get some revenue so that they can continue to run their shows.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of identifying new talent, celebrities have a big thing for boxing these days. Would you approve a social star to step into the UFC cage?
Listen, I've done some things to see how they, I brought Brock Lesnar in, CM Punk. If you look at boxing, in the state of boxing and where it keeps heading, it just keeps getting worse and worse. They couldn't think about boxing over the last 100 years, right? How much revenue it's brought in. Every time these guys put on an event now, it's like a going out of business sale. They're trying to get as much money out of you as they could possibly get. Now, boxing is exhibitions. They're putting on exhibitions for boxing. You got kids like Jake Paul fighting and people are talking about it. Boxing writers are writing about it. They can't get out of their own way, man. They just keep beating their head against the wall.
Well, you've liked to said in the past that you want fighters who move the needle. It's clear guys like Jake Paul move the needle. If he wanted to fight Conor McGregor in the UFC cage, and if Conor wanted that too, is that something you would approve?
Well, a few years ago, Bieber was talking about fighting Tom Cruise. How many pay-per-view buys do you think that would do? Should it happen? Probably not. It shouldn't happen, but it will sell. There's always going to be a market for, this famous person to fight this famous person. There's always going to be a market for that, but that's not what I do. I'm looking for the greatest fighters on the planet. I'm looking for the best up-and-coming talent. I'm looking for a kid like Israel Adesanya who can come in and go on an undefeated run, move up the light heavyweight, and then hope to fight John Jones at heavyweight someday. That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for, the boxing fights that used to happen in the 80s and the 90s, when you had Riddick Bowe versus Holyfield. You had, tons of great fights. Those days are long.
Absolutely, Dana. And lastly, this question comes in from one of our readers, and I'll share it with you as they had it. What are your goals for the remainder of this year in order to help elevate the sport of MMA?
Great question again. I'm excited about this year. We went through 2020 and went through COVID, and it's what set up this great year that we're having now. And I'm going to be coming out with some announcements this year that are just, every year we continue to take the sport to another level. And this year's no different. I'm excited for what we have coming down the pipe, and I can't wait to share it with everybody.